So something that I've always found interesting is the very concept of the floor is lava.
like the kids game?
Yeah,
where,
the kids game.
Like they crawl over the couch and jump all over?
Yeah, the floor. You know, everybody knows the game.
Yeah.
And that's what I find interesting. Because when I was a kid, I am 99% sure that nobody taught me that game. It was a game that we just made up on the fly, right? Yeah. It's not like tic-tac-toe or hopscotch where you learn the game from somebody else. It was just a thing. And I'm pretty sure that's how it is with everybody.
Yeah, it's a universal constant, kind of like the cool S. Like every school on the planet has invented the cool S. Yeah. You get taught that cool S by other people in your school, but they weren't taught it by anybody else.
Yeah, no, it just
develops.
It developed, yeah.
It's like something that humanity can't help but invent, like fire and AI.
So what you're suggesting is that if you completely reboot humanity, we wipe us out. The apocalypse happens and we start at zero again. Two guaranteed concepts that will be developed are the cool S and the floor is lava.
And fire, yes.
And fire. And,
eventually,
and
yes. Yeah, eventually, yes. It's a progression, you see. You start with fire, and then you get to the floor is lava, and then you get a cool S, and then you get AI.
It's the timeline of humanity.
Yeah.
I see. So welcome to Creature Crunch.
Hi.
The show where...
It's been 3 weeks since we recorded. This is our longest break in recording since we started.
Yep.
Because we both got kind of sick. Matt got a visit from Auntie Rona. And conquered her. Beat the...
I beat that.
Destroyed the inevitable Omicron.
I said, "No way, ma'am, get out."
Yep.
and then I coughed for a week.
Yeah. And I just had an inner infection that made me feel like I was spinning around in a chair for a couple days.
But yeah, this is the show where we take a creature, we tie it to a little rope, and send it out onto the prairie, and then use it to fish for a much larger and much more dangerous creature. My name is Matt.
And I'm Melvin's missing parents.
And this week, we are covering our third request movie, and one of my absolute personal favorites, Tremors.
Yep.
From 1990.
And it's good that this is a movie that we both really like and have seen a million times, because since it's been so long, we were going to, record it right after we watched it, 3 weeks ago. And then all the stuff happened. And we haven't watched it or even really talked to each other since. Mm-hmm. So it's good that it's one that we're very familiar with and can appreciate.
Absolutely.
This would be rough otherwise.
Yeah, like you were saying, if this was virtually any other movie, then this episode may just not have happened.
Right.
Or at least it would have been a very, very different of beast. But...
Yeah, if this would have been Big Legend, this episode would have been skipped. I would have called that one.
Which is too bad, because I really enjoyed the Big Legend episode.
Well, yeah, but it wouldn't have been as good because it would have been 3 weeks since we saw that.
Right. So let's talk about Tremors. This is another movie similar to Gremlins that not only is it a personal favorite of both of ours, we both really enjoyed this one. And this one, Tremors, is probably in my top 5 creature movies.
It's definitely up there, yeah.
I love everything about this movie. But it's also, a cultural phenomenon. Everybody knows Tremors. Everybody's seen Tremors.
Yeah.
So it's another tricky one.
And they're up to what? 6 sequels now? Something like that?
Something like that.
And a TV series.
Something like that, yeah.
And I think there's another TV series coming, if I'm not mistaken.
There was a pilot for they made a pilot for a reboot.
Okay.
A realistic reboot, maybe not realistic, but a more serious reboot with Kevin Bacon. You can find it on YouTube, and it's not even a pilot. It was a trailer for a pilot.
Okay.
They did a trailer as a proof of concept kind of thing.
Right.
And it's definitely one that takes itself way more seriously than any of the other movies. First movie included, and it's unclear as to whether it was supposed to be an actual reboot or a direct sequel to the first one or not. But
okay.
It's interesting to watch. I've got mixed feelings as far as it never obviously taking off in any way.
Right.
Because on one hand, I would love more Tremors done right. I have opinions on some of the more recent sequels. But at the same time, Tremors taken too seriously sucks the fun and spirit out of the originals. But I mean, we'll talk about those probably in the future. But yeah, it's a huge thing. Everybody knows Tremors. Everybody's seen it. You can find the entire 7-movie collection at Walmart. It's
right.
So I guess if you haven't seen it for some reason, go watch it.
We always find these movies where they're super classics to us, and we assume everyone has watched them. And then one of our friends is like, "Oh wow, I've never seen that." Right? It's like, "Oh, okay."
Right.
But there's blind spots in everyone's cultural zeitgeist. So
yeah, I mean, I'm kind of a big example of that.
Right.
And that's kind of why I go into this show with that in mind. And you also have to imagine. I mean, there's a lot of kids, and there's a lot of people who it just misses them, like you were saying. There's gaps. So if for whatever reason you haven't seen Tremors, go freaking watch Tremors, the original. It's fantastic.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. It holds up pretty darn well.
Yes, it does.
With a couple caveats,
right?
And we'll get to those.
Honestly, probably I feel less than Tremor. I feel that there are less than in Gremlins.
Yeah.
Personally, I think this movie holds up a lot better than a lot of others. But we'll get to those. We'll get to that. But yeah, just as forewarning, of course, there will be spoilers. Not that that's a huge deal with Tremors. I mean, it's another one of those movies that you can enjoy no matter how much knowledge you have of it.
With most of the movies we've watched on here, there's not huge earth-shaking twists, so it's like...
Right. But yeah, we'll go ahead and jump right into this, I believe. So, Tremors was directed by Ron Underwood and written by Underwood, Brent Maddock, and S.S. Wilson.
The entire SS wrote this?
The entire SS.
Gosh. I know I said there was some controversial stuff, but gosh.
Wilson reportedly got the idea from the script while he was working for the U.S. Navy as a kind of a filmmaker there for them. I've seen conflicting reports saying that it was him and Brent Maddock that were working for the Navy and wrote the script, but most sources that I can find just mention Wilson.
Wait a sec. He was working for the Navy in the desert?
He was...
I don't think there's a lot of boats out there.
Yeah, when I first read that, I had to stop too. And most sources just leave it at that.
Right.
But another one was saying he had actually he worked for the Navy as a filmmaker. He would actually go out and do filming for promotional materials or whatever else. So yeah, there's a reason for him to be out in the California desert.
It's like, it took me a sec, but then when I processed that information, it seemed very contradictory, and I was wondering if they just got really lost. They're like, no, go west. Go west. Keep going. Keep going.
When you hit water, you'll know. No, he was, but he was hiking over a big rock one day. He went on a lot of hikes, and he just kind of daydreamed about the idea of being stuck on that rock for some reason. He's like, ooh, what if there was something keeping me up here? And he ended up bringing that to his friends, Underwood and Maddock. And Underwood was working for National Geographic at the time.
Okay.
And when Wilson shared his idea with him, they all kind of piled together and started developing the original script. And Underwood was the one who kind of made sure that the monsters were developed into something that could theoretically exist.
Okay.
So that's where a lot of the scientific aspects of the graboids comes from. So,
yeah.
And the three would actually go on to co-create all three of the following sequels.
That surprises me.
It surprised me at first.
The first two I could see because they are like evolutions of the same monster, essentially.
Yeah.
But like the fourth one, I can't even remember the fourth one.
The fourth one was the Wild West one.
Really? Okay,
yes.
Yeah, that surprises me then.
So
that's
it did at first to me too. The first two for sure I felt are very like Tremors 1 and 2 to me have a very similar tone, very similar themes. The third one they start going a lot more goofy.
Yeah.
And then the fourth one they just kind of start throwing that out the door.
Yeah.
So, but if you, because I don't think you've seen the fifth one.
No, I haven't.
The fifth one is the last one I watched. I haven't watched any more beyond that.
Yeah.
And after watching the fifth one, there is a very noticeable and kind of stark shift in tone. You can definitely tell that they're made by different creative talents. And given that information, the first four, like, you can see the relationship that they have with each other. And I will say this, like, I remember as a kid growing up, you know, loving these movies, loved the first one, loved the second one. Third one was okay. I never watched the fourth one because I thought it looked stupid. I watched it a couple years ago, and I liked it a lot more than I anticipated. No, the fourth one is a lot of fun. The movie did originally underperform in theaters, but more than tripled its box office gross in VHS sales and rentals.
Yeah. This was a huge movie for that period.
Yeah. The role of Valentine McKee, our main character, our Kevin Bacon, was actually originally offered to Bill Paxton, Matthew Modine, and Bruce Campbell.
I could see Bruce Campbell doing it.
Before they ended up landing on Kevin Bacon due to his star power at the time. Similarly, Maddock imagined Burt Gummer being played by either Chuck Norris or Clint Eastwood during writing.
Oof.
Yeah, glad that didn't happen.
Yeah.
But we open up the movie with Valentine McKee, played by our Kevin Bacon, waking up Earl Bassett, played by Fred Ward, by scaring him with a false alarm of a stampede from, like, 4 cows. Earl is upset at this fake fire alarm, but Val ridicules him because it's, like, 4 cows.
And then they have a conversation about how many cows constitute a stampede.
Yep. We never get an answer to that.
No, we don't. We are left hanging on that question.
Which is an interesting question, though. It's like, what is the number? I mean...
like, if it's 1, I assume it's just like, oh, shit, runaway cow.
Yeah.
But...
Is 2 a stampede?
I think 2 might be a stampede.
2 could be a stampede.
2 or more cows is a stampede.
Does it matter how fast they're running?
I assume they're going at top speed. Like,
I mean,
if they're just trotting... Okay, if you have 1 cow and that cow walks away from you, you don't say that cow is stampeding.
Stampede! But if it's 2 cows...
If it's 2 cows and they're walking the same direction away from you, but you can still run faster than they do, I don't think it's a stampede.
Okay.
So the cows have to be traveling faster than you can travel by yourself. And there has to be more than 1 of them. I think we've defined a stampede.
Well, wait a minute, because that would mean that stampedes differ from person to person. Because if let's say hypothetically 2 cows are running faster than, like, me, because let's face it, I can't run very fast. But then we also have, like, an athletic, like, Olympic runner next to me who can outrun them.
Okay.
So it's a stampede to me, but not to him.
No. We'll say it's 2 or more cows going the same direction, faster than the average person can go.
Okay.
It's a stampede for everybody, but, like, some people might be able to run to the cows.
Okay.
And, like, probably piss those cows off pretty bad.
And then you
have more cows and a bigger stampede.
Oh, I see. The avalanche effect.
Oh, the avalanche effect, yes. Mini snowflakes create snowfall.
How many, okay.
We're getting caught up in the weeds, man.
Hey, this is good conversation.
We're like 3 minutes into the movie and we're so lost in the weeds.
So, while Kevin Bacon would later recall working on the movie as being one of the most fun experiences of his career, at the time, however, he considered it an all-time low point.
can actually kind of see that because, like, he's been in so many, like, big movies, not necessarily huge budget movies, but, like, big, like,
at
starring
the time,
role movies.
Well, like I said, they hired him for his star power.
Right.
He was a big actor, especially at the time.
And then, like, the next day you're in this weird little monster movie with Reba McEntire.
Yeah, he apparently is quoted a lot by saying that he kind of fell to his knees, not screaming at, but yelling, talking to his at the time pregnant wife, just kind of like, oh my god, what am I doing? I'm filming a movie about underground worms,
right?
And like, I can easily see, that being kind of a rough thing. Yeah. But I guess,
I mean, it's a hell of a thing to go from Flashdance to this. Or Roadhouse.
Right. But at the same time, I think just in retrospect, especially knowing how big the movie got, he was able
and how beloved it is, honestly.
Yeah, and he was able to probably look back on it with a lot more fondness.
Yeah.
And it's interesting to see that, like, he's like, oh, I had a lot of fun, and then I see he was, like, in tears. It's like, wait, what?
Right.
So, Val and Earl, we're introduced to the fact that these two are handymen who live and work in Perfection, Nevada, a tiny, isolated town in a valley.
It's a weird little town. Like, it really is.
Yep, and it has a population of 14 people.
Mm-hmm. Which gives us basically our entire cast for the movie.
Almost. Interestingly, stupidly enough, the nitpickers and the fine-tuners will point out that of those 14 people, the doc and his wife are not counted because they are not technically residents yet.
Ah.
But Melvin's parents are counted, even though they're not in the movie.
Yeah.
So there's a cast of 14 people.
Mm-hmm. There's a cast of 14 people, but not two of the people who live in the town. And then there's also the road workers.
Yep.
Who I don't think live in the town.
No, that's fair too. Perfection was inspired by Darwin, California, which is an ex-mining community of around 32 people.
Okay.
Principal photography took place in Lone Pine, California, but reshoots actually took place in Darwin.
Okay.
The town of Perfection was completely built in just a matter of weeks and then completely dismantled after shooting.
Yeah.
So all of the buildings and all of everything you see in the movie is it's a set.
That's pretty cool.
In the middle of the desert. So it is really cool. I remember reading somewhere that like most of the buildings and shops were just, the facades. They were just the storefronts and stuff. But yeah, it's a neat little thing. It's too bad that it's not still in existence, because that would be a huge tourist attraction at this point. But of course they wouldn't know at the time.
No.
But we get to watch Kevin Bacon absolutely fail at hammering in a staple on a post, and it is simply the best thing. My wife and I... Okay, so my daughter... this is going to come up with quite a few. Last year, my daughter watched this movie a lot.
A lot.
She loved this movie. She called it the Screamy Worm. She was like 4 at the time, and she just wanted it on repeat. So my wife and I watched it a lot, and we'd end up quoting each other a lot. And like, this was one of our favorite scenes, is watching Kevin Bacon fail at hammering in the staple. IMDb claims that this was a gag that wasn't entirely scripted, and that Earl's reaction is genuine, and I'm relatively positive that this is a lie fabricated by Kevin Bacon for obvious reasons. Because that was not a gag.
No,
that was just...
that's a man failing at a fence post.
Exactly.
I mean, I would do the same thing. I would not do any better, but...
Right. It's just really funny how IMDb wants me to know that it's a gag.
Yeah. It's a goof 'em up, man.
But yeah, like I said, we would quote this all the time, and like one of our favorite lines is when Earl and Val are driving away, and Earl's like,
"You never take the long view. I mean, here it is Monday, and I'm already thinking of Wednesday." It is Monday, right?
And Penny and I will quote that at each other whenever we make a mistake. Be like, here you are thinking about Wednesday, and it's only Monday. It's good stuff. Anyway, they speed off to meet with the new seismology grad student, who's a girl.
Oh, man.
Val is very excited in hopes that she's basically a bimbo type. But oops, she's a nerd and well-rounded character. Her name is Rhonda LeBeck. She's played by Finn Carter. She wonders if there's been any drilling or blasting or something, because she's been detecting some strange readings. Earl tries to be a real good wingman and get Val with Rhonda, but Val isn't interested on account that she is not one of them bimbos. They head back to town. We're introduced to a slew of characters, including Melvin. Hey,
amongst others, there's Melvin. We meet our Melvin for the movie.
We learn that Val and Earl are unhappy with their lot in life, and the hard, unrewarding work that they do. Mm-hmm. The last straw is when their septic pump malfunctions and sprays them with sewage. So they pack up, they begin leaving, and they're stopped by Nancy Sterngood, who's played by Charlotte Richards, who tries to tempt them into staying for a little longer, but they refuse. Nancy's daughter, Mindy, is played by Ariana Richards, who would later go on to play Lexi in Jurassic Park.
I did not know that.
And once you know that, it's like, it's totally obvious, right?
Yeah.
So
she knows this movie. It's Linux.
On their way out, though, they see a man sitting in the upper levels of an electrical tower. They identify him as Edgar Deems, a local drunk. They head up to retrieve him, but he is dead and clutching a Winchester rifle. In a pretty harrowing scene. Val and Earl take Edgar to Dr. Jim Wallace, who's busy building a new home in perfection with his wife. Dr. Wallace determines that he died of dehydration. So these are the two that are not part of the population of perfection. The already dwindling population.
Yeah. We're down to 13 now.
Yep. Meanwhile, a farmer named Old Fred, that's the only credit that I could find, he is just Old Fred, he's tending to his field of dirt when he notices... Yeah, I mean, you look at that, you tell me there are crops growing.
He's a dirt
farmer. He notices that his sheep are going crazy, and suddenly he's pulled underground.
Yep.
And we're down to 12 people.
We're down to 12.
Evidently...
It's a good movie to teach a kid, backwards counting.
Countdown. That's
how you should have taught Sonia how to math.
Yep. Yeah, that's it. Sonia.
Okay, Sonia, if you have 14 people in perfection and 2 of them get eaten by Screamy Worm, how many do you have left? Well, are the doctor and his wife there?
Something else.
No, shut up. They don't count, and neither does the grad student.
Evidently, there's a cut opening scene where Edgar and Fred are old friends and are meeting up to trade livestock. But Edgar's prized donkey, Justine, is eaten by one of the worms. The scene was cut because the studio thought it was both too boring and also kind of revealed the graboid mystery a little too soon. I don't remember if I have it in my notes later on or not, because it's been like 3 weeks since I wrote these. But evidently, the movie was cut originally very, very differently. Well, not even cut, but intended differently. The scene with Fred and the scene with Edgar was meant to be in there, but the scene with Fred getting sucked under the ground wasn't originally intended to be there as well.
Okay.
They also didn't have like the quote unquote graboid vision of
when it attacks Rhonda's car.
Yeah, like at the beginning.
Yeah, the Evil Dead vision car.
Yeah, they didn't want to have any of that because the filmmakers originally wanted this to be kind of a mystery as to what was actually happening.
Okay.
And they wanted audiences to actually wonder, like, is it a serial killer? Like Val and Earl eventually come to the conclusion of.
Right.
They wanted it to be a mystery, and then that way when the reveal of, oh god, underground worms, it was a lot more shocking. Which... honestly, I think would have been a really cool...
It would have been interesting, but they would have completely had to change the marketing of the movie.
Well, that's the problem.
And probably its title.
The title, the marketing, everything about the movie would have had to change. And that's kind of the problem if you ever do want... movies can't do that surprise, oh, this is what it's actually about. Because you need to attract the right audience.
Yeah. It's very hard to do that sort of thing.
But thinking about this in a vacuum where you're just watching this movie completely blind, that would have been a really, really cool delivery. Mm-hmm. I like to envision the universe of that being a possibility. But,
yeah.
Apparently another cut of the original script evidently included a 15th resident.
Okay, who's our 15th resident? Is it the alien from Alien?
No, it was a Viola. Viola was a mean and cranky old lady who had a Rottweiler that barked constantly, and she was supposed to die in the first attack, but she was later cut for unknown reasons.
Okay.
So she was also supposed to be amongst these build-up characters that get eaten before the movie gets going. So... Val and Earl discuss what happened while driving through a pass that has some kind of road construction going on. That's where they're talking about, what the hell was Edgar running from? Who's scared of a Winchester rifle? And again, it's that this really could have been a cool mystery that I don't know if I was watching this blind, I would have been hooked at that point. Whoa, this is cool. But they also then pass by the farm and see Fred's livestock laying in shreds.
Just completely wrecked.
Yep, just bits and pieces of sheep everywhere. They end up finding Fred's head and head back to town in a hurry.
They keep trying to leave town, but running into dead people.
Yep. And we get some more very memorable lines. Like I love, I love Kevin Bacon's delivery of,
Jesus, what the hell's going on? I mean, what the hell is going on?
I love that. They're driving back frantic because now they're pretty convinced that there is a serial killer out, like cutting people's heads off.
They definitely know that something funky's going on.
Yeah, and they even warn the construction workers there that there's a killer on the loose. You know, he's cutting people's heads off, and the workers blow them off and continue working.
And then we find out that the ground is full of raspberry jam.
Yeah, they jackhammer into something and it oozes before taking off with the jackhammer. They end up dragging one of the men up to his death and burying another under rubble that covers the road. Mm-hmm. So now trapping everybody in there. But
in the valley, yep.
In the valley. And it's another one of those things where I love the framing device of them trying to leave and having to come back and passing this over and over again, and then suddenly, it's
really funny.
Mm-hmm. Val and Earl arrive back at town and head to Walter's shop, the only shop in town, and I couldn't find the name of it other than Walter's shop.
Yeah, I don't think it actually has a name other than just the shop.
I'm relatively positive in the subsequent sequels they name it, but
yeah, I could see that.
But we find Miguel complaining about his cattle, kind of giving him more hints as to something is going on. He's like, I don't know what happened. They're missing. I'm not accusing anybody. Val and Earl try to call out for help, but Walter's phone is dead. So the pair decide to head out to Bixby, the nearest town, in order to get help. Walter Chang, the owner of Walter's shop, was actually originally supposed to be a Vietnamese man named Pham Van.
Okay.
Until the role was given to Victor Wong, who specifically requested that Walter's last name be Chang. I thought that was interesting. So they completely changed the character's, I mean, obviously his ethnicity, thankfully.
Yeah.
But they even changed his name based off of the actor's request. So that's interesting. They are, of course, stopped by the rubble on the road and discover the dead workers. And in their haste to leave, they back up into a ditch and seemingly get hung up on something. But Val stubbornly drives off. Mm-hmm. Well, and while Earl is chastising him, Bacon gives another really good line read.
Could you shut up?
The duo arrive back at Walter's again. And
they're burning so much gas.
I know, right? It's not going to matter very long.
No, it's really not.
But they make it back to Walter's again and explain that the road is out. But they're kind of cut off as Mindy notices a huge snake-like creature attached to their axle. Burt Gummer, who's played by Michael Gross, removes it with a shovel and remarks that it must be pretty strong. I have here pretty strong. Anyway, but he remarks that it must be pretty strong in order to stall out their truck. He also determines that there must be more of them because not only one of them could not have eaten Fred and his entire flock of sheep.
Yeah.
So we get that furthering mystery, that build that is completely ruined by everything. But although at the same time, I do remember watching this movie and at least they were able to preserve some sort of like mystery and suspense because when you see the little worm attached to their truck, you're thinking, oh, that's it.
That's the monster,
so,
yeah.
Yep. Michael Gross also played Stephen Keaton in Family Ties and apparently started his role as Burt Gummer within a day of the former's rap party.
Yeah. Like, Burt Gummer is one of those characters where, like, when I was growing up and watching the movie a bunch on Sci-Fi and whatever, like, he was always like, oh, it's Burt, he's really funny, he's cool, he's the hero, he's the guy who knows what's going on. Now it's like, I know so many Burt Gummers, I know how they vote. I'm not saying anything, but I'm saying there's a non-zero chance that Burt Gummer was at the Capitol building last year on January 6th.
That's them some strong words, Chris.
I'm not saying it, but I'm saying.
Yeah, I have no evidence to back that up. I will come to Burt's defense in that, like, I don't know, in the movie he does seem pretty anti-government. He seems incredibly liberal in this because he's like, we moved to perfection for complete isolation, you know. I don't know.
He reminds me so much of my uncle who is going into that crazy, like, oh, I have to isolate myself. Here's my 1,000,000 guns and my fence and my bunker.
No, I'm with you. Like, it wouldn't. I could easily see Bert walking around with a MAGA hat.
Right.
Like, I get you.
So it really kind of puts that character in a different flavor.
It really does, and it's too bad because growing up, I loved this character, and he's even better in the second film.
Yeah.
And, you know, he's the star in everyone after that.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
Especially in this first movie. Like,
yeah, it's a hard pill to swallow.
He does have his bunker and, like, all that stuff. It's like, yeah, I know Burt Gummers. They scare me.
It's a hard pill to swallow, but I mean, rest assured. I guess if you can take solace in the fact, and this will give you some insight as to the fifth movie on. In the fifth movie, you get to watch a lion pee on him.
Okay.
So anyway,
I'm glad I stopped watching.
We'll probably cover it at some point.
Depending on how long this podcast lasts, man. There's some of these that we say that we'll get to, like, we're going to get to Anaconda 5.
Dude, there's nobody stopping us from these podcasts.
That's what I'm afraid of.
No, Walter buys the snake from them for $15. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of, like, real small moments and character interactions that I just adore.
And, like, my favorite thing about that is how pissed Val and Earl are about not getting more money for the snake.
Right.
Like, that keeps coming up. They're like, oh, we could have got $50 from him.
Yeah. Well, it's great because, like, they're upset because they sell it to him for $15,
right.
And then he turns around and makes a business out of it. He's
right.
You know, selling photos and stuff, and it's like, oh man, they're all upset about it. But I'm like, dude, his customer base is the 14 people that live in town.
12 people now.
That's like, come on, really? How lucrative could that be?
I don't imagine there's a lot of pass-through traffic imperfection.
Perfection does not have a lot of tourism.
Right.
Yet. Which is kind of the plot of the third movie.
Right.
Anyway, Bert's wife, Heather, is played by Reba McEntire, of course. And this is her very first acting role. Underwood was uninterested in casting her at first because he was pretty sick of non-acting celebrities landing acting roles and saw it as really gimmicky. But after he saw her audition, he changed his tune and cast her immediately. He was just like, she's perfect.
She's really good in this movie.
She is. She is incredible. And
she sings the song over the ending credits.
The ending credits, and during the scene with the Doc and his wife coming up, where they're when his wife is hiding in the station wagon and actually turns on the radio.
Right.
Another one of Reba McEntire's songs plays there too. And speaking of, we cut to that scene where Dr. Wallace and Megan, his wife, are finishing up work for the evening, and when their generator mysteriously vanishes. And when they go to investigate, it's kind of shot out of the ground, and Wallace is sucked down. Megan tries to recover him and finds one of the snakehead things. She freaks out, rushes to the car, and hides inside, where it is, of course, drug into the ground.
Yeah, it's a kind of a spooky scene, honestly, where...
It is, and it was actually intended to be much longer and more visceral.
Okay.
Apparently the effect that they used to sink the car, which is using some science of vermiculite, which is it's an earthy dirt-like substance, but it kept hardening too fast, so they had to use some clever editing and cuts to make the scene work.
Right.
So,
but it's still pretty...
No, it's very effective for what it is.
Watching her get dragged under the car, get dragged into the earth, and those worms just blap, 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 splatting all over it.
And one other thing that's brought up in this scene that I really enjoy about this movie, and it's not something that I am consciously aware of other movies doing, in that the characters keep mentioning the smell that these things have.
Yeah.
Like, the graboids are apparently very, very smelly creatures, and they always mention it, and that is something that has stuck with me, like, because it's consistently used. I mean, I think in other horror movies they might be like, oh god, and then cover their mouth.
Yeah, it's not exaggerated. It's just like, wow, this smells really terrible.
Yeah, they just mention it, but they do it so consistently. It's just like, oh, okay, you know, the doctor here is just like, oh, it's a geyser. They smell like that. They stink like that. You know,
yeah,
sulfuric.
They have a very sulfuric smell.
Yeah, and you know, later on, you know, they're like, oh, does it smell like it because it's dead? And it's like, they just drive that home, and it's just like, good. I appreciate the small details.
There's a lot of world building with these things that is really cool.
Right.
Like, just from the way they work and everything about them and their biology, how they smell, like where they theorize these things come from, like they've been here forever, or maybe they're
aliens.
Maybe they're a government experiment. Like, who knows?
Which is another thing that they wanted in this movie, is that they didn't want the explanation to be there. They wanted that mystery, which I personally think is something that is sorely missing in a lot of modern sci-fi.
Yeah,
and
you
horror.
don't need to explain absolutely everything.
Yeah.
Unless that is the story.
Yeah.
Like, if the story is, like, not the monster, but where the monster comes from, you know?
Right.
Like, that's one thing. But if you're just shoehorning origins into the movies, that's how you end up with, like, Alien Covenant.
Right. So.
I'll defend parts of Prometheus. There's parts of Prometheus I really dig. But, like, you don't need to explain absolutely everything.
Right. So back at the at Walter's shop, the townspeople are all discussing what to do. They're completely cut off from help. Miguel decides to send Val and Earl on horseback to Bixby for help, because that's pretty much the only way that they're going to get out at this point. The pair saddle up and they head out, eventually swinging by Doc's house on their way out and discover the buried station wagon.
Don't they hear the radio underground?
They hear they hear golden ollies. They hear the goddamn golden ollies. And yeah, they discover the station wagon. And at this point, they're just baffled that these little worm things would bury a station wagon. Mm-hmm. They don't know why. They don't know what's going on. So they're like, look, we're going to get out of here as fast as possibly. So they're racing off, but along the way, all of a sudden, the horses start freaking out, and of course, they're attacked by these worms. Yeah. And then to achieve the scene where the horse is tangled up in the worms, the horse was trained to lay down.
Okay.
A vet sedated it, and they wrapped it in fake tendrils for the shot.
Okay.
There was an American Humane Society representative present to ensure that the horse was not in distress during the process.
That's good, because I was really worried that horse got injured or was...
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, you see the scene, and that, like...
The horse
as an adult, like,
yeah.
that's your reaction. It's like...
I don't like horses, but I don't want one to be injured for the sake of...
a movie.
Of like, big underground snaky movie.
Right. Yeah, no. Animal...
horses are very mistreated animals in the first place.
Agreed.
So it's like... I don't want one, like, hurt or, like, even disturbed for something stupid like a movie.
Or distressed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
no.
that's really reassuring. I'm glad.
Yeah, we do not support animal cruelty here.
No, even animals we don't really care for.
Yep.
Horses, they freak me out.
Val shoots one of the snakes in the head, and suddenly the ground bursts open to reveal that they're actually just the tongues of a much larger creature.
This is such a cool reveal. Mm-hmm. Like, what? It's really neat. Like, I remember watching this and being like, ah, as a kid.
Yeah, it's so cool. I love
Look
it.
at that thing.
Yep. And we get our first reveal. Yeah. It chases Val and Earl along a fence and into a concrete-lined ditch where it brains itself trying to catch them.
Yeah.
Val gives his one and only F-bomb of the movie.
Well, he killed him. We killed it. Fuck you!
And then suddenly Rhonda shows up, and together the three of them dig up the whole monster. And let's talk about that monster.
Yeah. It's worth talking about, because it's a beaut.
It's a classic monster at this point. The monsters were designed by Amalgamated Dynamics. Evidently, one of the concepts for the creatures gave it an outer shell that would retract to reveal a slimier inner worm. But the idea was scrapped because foreskin.
I can see that, yeah.
Yeah, evidently they like showed that to some of the team, and the team started giggling, and they were like, "Oh, trashing it."
Yeah.
Good move.
Good move, yeah.
Another early concept gave the worms the ability to mimic sounds, so that they could lure in unsuspecting prey. This idea was scrapped because the writers figured it was just too much. Like, these things have enough powers as it is.
Yeah, you don't need to put a hat on a hat.
Yeah, exactly. But speaking of the sounds that the graboids make have been actually reused in a bunch of other movies, including Predator 2,
Okay.
Starship Troopers,
Okay.
Ants.
What? No, like, I have to... like...
I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah.
That's what I was told.
The two starring people for Ants, Woody Allen and a graboid. God. Like, the graboid's the least offensive of the two.
Other movies, Mosquito,
Okay.
Eight-Legged Freaks, and more recently, Kong Skull Island. So yeah, they use these sounds a lot in other movies, which I never picked up on.
No.
And now I'm going to be listening for them
Yeah,
every time
because
I watch
they have
movies.
a very distinct sound, and it's like, I think I've seen all of those movies except for Mosquito. Like, I don't know what that is. I'm assuming it's
Good,
about a mosquito.
I'm not the only one then.
Yeah, and like, I honestly don't recognize it in any of those, especially ants.
Yeah, I don't know what to
Like,
tell
maybe
you.
it's the... Is it... Because those movies came out exactly the same time. Is it Ants or A Bug's Life that has the bird?
Bug's Life features the bird. I do not remember enough about ants to say anything about it, other than Woody Allen. Like,
Yeah, Woody Allen and the ants having like really human faces and it being kind of creepy.
intensely creepy.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I don't know. I could not tell you.
Because like, I thought maybe it was like the sound the bird makes.
No,
But that's in
that's
Bug's
in
Life.
Bug's Life,
Yeah.
yeah.
I don't know. I don't fucking know. I ain't watching that movie again to find out.
I'll do it. No shame. I don't care.
The only thing I really remember about that movie is we used to routinely take vacations up to Denver when I was a kid and go to like the museum and the zoo and stuff like that up there.
Yeah.
And like the year that movie came out on VHS, we stayed in a hotel and I would have been, I don't know, 13, 14, something like that. And the hotel room had a VCR. And it was like the first time we were in a hotel room that had a VCR. And we were like, fuck yeah, VCR. So we ran over to the Target that was by our hotel. And we were like, okay, let's pick up a movie to watch. And we're like, okay, Ants, we can watch that because, you know, there's Chris and they're 13 or 14. And then there's Chris's brother and they're, I don't know, like 2 or 3. Yeah, fuck it, Ants, that's a good movie to watch for this sort of thing. And VHSs were very expensive, like when they first came out. So it was like, I don't know, $25 for us to pick up the fucking Ants movie to watch in a hotel room. And that's my story about Ants.
Yeah.
And I think that's the only time I've ever watched it.
I've only watched it once, and I'm pretty sure I saw it in theaters.
So you made the bad choice when it came to those two movies.
Dude, I was like 12 or 13. I had no idea or control over that. So
No, it's your fault. You did that.
But
I blame you for Woody Allen, Matt. That's what I'm extrapolating from this conversation.
damn. Okay.
14-year-old Matt was responsible for Woody Allen.
If there's even a shred of truth to that, then oh god, I owe a lot of people an apology.
You're history's greatest monster.
Oh man. So yeah, so those are the like the little trivia bits that I have about the design of the monster. Did you have anything you wanted to add?
I just think it's really cool and big and squishy, and I like it.
It is. In order to get the effect of them digging it up, they had to build the entire worm.
Right.
Dig a trench, put it in, bury it,
Right.
and then dig it again.
It's a lot of work, but yeah, I can see that.
It's effective.
Yeah. Like one of the things I don't really get from the movie is there's that long concrete ditch. Why don't they go back to it?
I don't know.
Okay. It seems like that would have been a decent place to like at least hide and figure shit out.
Well, I think it was probably a kind of a one-off thing.
Okay.
I mean, this thing killed itself against this wall. Maybe it just hit it at the right angle. Because later we see one burst through an entire basement wall with no problem. So
Yeah.
Whatever.
It hit his weak point on the wall.
You know, maybe this is just the weak one. Rhonda examines the creature and determines quite a bit about it, including its method of locomotion, sensory detection, a bunch about it. A lot of the scientific things. More of the like we were saying, the feasibly exist kind of things. She also deduces that there are 3 more, according to her seismic readings, since they're positioned all over the place.
Right. It's lucky they had a seismologist.
Yeah.
Like, if they would have had, I don't know, an entomologist or something, like, they would have been like, oh, fuck, I don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
But it's not a bug, I can tell you that. It's something else.
That there ain't a bug.
That's not a bug, that
No
is
bug.
something else. It got no legs. I deal with things that have more legs.
I'm out.
Yeah, or like a volcanologist or something. Like, I'm studying old volcanic activity in this valley, and
Right.
like, oh god, I am way over my head.
That's not a volcano.
It's not a volcano. It's got as many legs as a volcano.
That's when the similarities end.
Yeah. I am outie. I don't even know, man. If it ain't got no lava, I ain't got no lover.
Armed with this knowledge, the trio decide to head over to Rhonda's work area to get her truck. Mm-hmm. And Earl steps in a prairie dog burrow.
Yep.
Another quote that my wife and I frequently shoot at each other.
Well, that's one of those things where, like, that's very relevant to our area.
It's true. It's true.
There's more prairie dogs than people here.
Right. It's just great anytime when we trip. It's just, ugh.
Damn prairie dog burrow.
That's great. Anyway, so as they approach, another worm attacks, and they retreat to a nearby boulder where the creature can't reach them. We also find that it is the creature that specifically grabbed their truck.
Yeah, because it's missing a tongue.
Yep, it's missing a tongue.
Part of a tongue.
They nickname it Stumpy. They end up staying the night up on the rock, only discovered that Stumpy didn't lose interest overnight.
Yeah, these things are pretty tenacious.
Yep, and that kind of explains why Edgar died on the tower.
Yep.
So these creatures will hang out for the meal until the meal dies, and probably long after that. Who knows?
Yeah.
While Val and Earl argue about what to do, Rhonda comes up with a plan to pole vault from one boulder to another in order to get to her truck. Mm-hmm. A lot of convenient things here.
Very, like, what were those pipes? Like, did they ever say what those were from?
Nope.
Okay.
No, it was just random, like, pipes or poles that are just kind of nearby. And it's a good thing they ran to the boulder that was in the line of boulders next to the truck that she conveniently parked there. Like, these guys are lucky.
Earl does fail his initial QuickTime event, though. I noticed that.
Yeah, he does.
Like, this movie inspired so much shit from video games. Like, just the whole, like, ground sensing monsters and, like, oh, it's a convenient trail of platforming that we have to do to avoid the monster.
Yeah.
Gotta do a QuickTime event to not fall off your pole.
Yep. Fortunately, they succeed all the other QuickTime events.
Yeah. They do it pretty easy, and they're really goofy music plays.
Yep.
It's like summer camp music. And then there's that one shot of them, like, against the sunset, like, pole vaulting all at the same time. And it's like, okay, this is...
No,
it's charmingly goofy.
It is. It's a moment of levity that is nice. Mm-hmm. And then once they hit the truck, Stumpy attacks, and Val succeeds his QuickTime event and punches one of its tongues.
Yeah. He parries successfully.
And they escape. They end up making it back to Walter's shop to deliver the news of what they've learned. And at first, Walter and Nestor, Nestor being one of the other residents, who was just there.
Who's just there and kind of a shit.
Yep. They harass Rhonda for not having all the answers.
Yeah, it's just...
Which is, again, hilarious to me.
Hey, Rhonda, what's the name you call those things? Where did they come from?
Huh? I don't know.
You're a scientist, aren't you? Yeah, aren't you supposed to have a theory or something?
Look, these creatures are absolutely unprecedented.
Yeah, but where do they come from?
Yeah.
It's like, I adore that scene. I adore a lot of scenes.
It's really funny. But it just comes back to the point where, like, you got the one type of scientist who could tell you anything about these. She's telling you what she's got, which is that, like, there's more than one of them. There's at least 3 of them.
Yep. They hunt by sound. There's vibration.
Yeah, it's like she's managed to extrapolate a lot of information about these things based off of her field of science. You got super lucky that you got that, man. If you would have had that poor volcanologist, you would not know anything.
Yep. But again, it's also one of those, like, uneducated small town hicks. Like, this is exactly how they would treat somebody in this situation.
Okay, you're a scientist. You know all of the science.
Yeah. Tell us everything we need to know.
It's like in other movies where, like, they will have a character whose field of science is science. So they can they're just like, all colleges, all degrees, like, they know everything about everything.
If it's about science, they know it.
Yeah. And it's like, no, like, you have a specialty. Like, you know certain things. Like, you're a biologist, you're a seismologist, you're a geologist, you're a volcanologist. Like, you're not just science man of science.
through this, they do eventually decide that they are the first ones to ever encounter these things.
Yeah, which ends up being not true.
And it's true.
I'm just saying.
I mean,
these guys wrote that movie. They know
it's true.
They will eventually know it's not true.
As fun as the other movies are, it does kind of throw a lot of the wrenches in the works. But
like what the canon, such as it is, of the Tremors movies is very loosey goosey.
Yeah, but they determine that they should be the ones to name these things. Walter and Melvin spitball some ideas for names. Some of them that are thrown out are, well, I guess the only two that are thrown out.
Yeah.
Suckoids and snakeoids.
Because they like the suffix oid.
Yeah, Walter's all about oid. Oid!
Was it that the Billy Bumbler from the Dark Tower series? Oid?
Yeah, that's oi.
Oh, okay.
You're close.
I was close. I was within spitting distance there.
Yep.
I'm coming for you, little Stevie King.
Nancy thinks that they should wait it out until someone notices the throat is out and send help, because that's just, that's how that things work.
Right.
But oops, they're dead already.
Yeah.
The inspection crew was murdered off camera.
Yeah.
We just see their helmet and viscera.
So we can kind of assume what happened there. We can put together a story.
Val has a very exaggerated freak out about not sitting around and waiting.
Maybe they won't even come to here. Maybe they'll leave us alone.
Chainsaw. That's what I'll use.
Hey, wake up! Now look! You see, they're headed right for us. Look, they trapped Edgar here, grabbed old Fred right here, nailed those two poor suckers on the road, and the doctor's place is right here. Now, this valley is just one long smorgasbord. We have got to get out.
Kevin Bacon is very good. And I noticed he's like, just the way his hair is styled in this movie, he's got a great big forehead.
And when tension is the highest, Walter finally comes up with the name Graboids.
Yeah.
We don't actually learn that this is the name that sticks until the next movie, which is another thing that I like about this movie.
Yeah. They're just those weird things.
Yeah, and they're just, for all intents and purposes, they're the Tremors.
Yeah, that is 100% what I thought they were called when I was a kid.
Yep. Well, that's because at the time, that's in the era when the movie was named after the monster.
Right.
So, because this is the last name that he came up with before his death, it implies that they named them in honor of him, which I always kind of like.
The Walter Memorial Graboid.
Melvin cries wolf because he's Melvin.
Oh, God, I hate that kid.
And then
I hate that fucking kid so much.
And you can hate him in the rest of the movies.
Yeah,
I know. In the third movie,
and in the series.
And in the series, I've still not ever seen the series.
I've seen most of the series.
I've heard a lot of good things.
It's really good. Has jack shit to do with Tremors, but it's like a Monster of the Week show, like a comedic Monster of the Week show. Christopher Lloyd is really good in it, and yeah, Melvin is like I think the only recurring character from the movies
other than Burt Gummer.
Other than Burt, yeah.
I was gonna say, Burt Gummer's in everyone. So.
Yeah. And like it's a good series. I still don't like Melvin.
Well, no, you're not supposed to.
No, he's a fuck.
He's a pizza face.
Speaking as a former pizza face, shut up.
Speaking as a former pizza face, okay.
We're all fucks.
Yeah. But he cries wolf, and then a Graboid takes his basketball.
Oh man, my basketball.
Earl heads out to teach him a lesson until they find him up a pole, and they suddenly realize what's going on, and they retreat back inside as the Graboid attacks. They all hush up and try not to draw its attention, but then they hear Mindy on her pogo stick outside.
And her Walkman, so she can't hear them. Oh, yep. God, she can't hear us.
Yep, she's out there on her pogo stick. Val rushes to save her, and the worm takes the pogo stick. It gives it back, though.
It does. Good for it.
A second monster shows up, and Rhonda trips in some barbed wire while trying to get away, and Val is forced to save her too, using a pickaxe and some hasty pants removal.
Yeah, that doesn't seem like the most convenient way to do that, to pull the pants over the shoes, but...
I mean, when you're in a hurry,
yeah.
I guess.
I'm just thinking, like, I can't pull my pants off over my shoes. They're too tight.
Yeah. But while patching Rhonda up inside Walter's shop, the generator kicks on and it attracts the Graboid again, which bursts through the floor and eats Walter and knocks Rhonda out of a window as The rest of the people retreat to the roof, and Rhonda is forced to climb the neighboring water tower. After climbing to safety, they alert everybody else in the town to get to higher ground.
Yep.
They contact Bert and Heather, who live too far away, via radio, who are currently in their basement. Heather starts up a case polisher because that's, I mean, it's funny because it's one of the, dramatic irony where it's like the characters clearly don't, no, not dramatic
I don't know what you're trying to say.
Oh god, I don't know what the term is called, but where the audience knows something the characters don't.
Oh, right.
But yeah, it's just funny. It's because like, you see that happening. It's like, you're an idiot. Why are you doing that? And then you have to remind yourself, like, no, they don't. They literally don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, it tracks one of the graboids. And due in part to Val's panic, Bert's misunderstanding, and kind of a poor connection, they aren't able to retreat in time before the monster bursts through their wall and attacks.
Just goes right through that center block wall.
They unload an awful lot of munitions into it before finally killing it with an elephant gun. This scene was made by cleverly stitching together a miniature set of the basement and a graboid hand puppet.
That's really funny.
Evidently, one of the miniatures was of a stool, and it was so intricate that the props department specifically requested that it not be damaged in this scene.
That's funny.
They're like, no, put it as far away from the wall as possible, please. We love this stool.
This is our stool.
Yep.
But it kind of takes a little bit of the menace out of the graboids when you find out that one was like the size of your fist.
Yeah. But yeah, and then they celebrate. We get a good line, a good 80-yard line in.
Yeah.
And speaking of that, originally the film had as many as 20 F-bombs.
That's funny.
But they were almost all cut or dubbed over to push the MPAA reading from R to PG-13.
Right.
And this is the scene that always comes to my mind whenever I think of that bit of trivia.
Yeah.
Earl wants to send Bert and Heather for help, but they discover that the remaining graboids are getting smarter and are trying to figure the buildings. They're trying to figure out the buildings that they're on.
It's another really cool world building thing, just watching these big creatures, these blind creatures, because we know that they're blind at this point, just kind of like flailing with those tentacles, trying to figure out like, okay, what's the size of this thing? Like, how does it move? Can I knock it down? It's kind of like a toddler figuring stuff out.
Or just a smart animal.
Right.
You're watching them like feel around on the building's corners and the edges. Yeah. They're learning.
Well, I'd say toddlers are pretty smart animals.
One of them tips over the trailer that Nestor is on, who is then swiftly eaten due in part to a gross misunderstanding of how these things actually work.
Yeah.
They get off the ground, and he's like, oh, the floor is lava, and he hops into a tire, and he's like, that's not, okay, okay, good, I'm safe.
It just pulls him through the fucking tire.
Yep. And due to this scene, growing up, and for the longest time, I always thought that Nestor was supposed to be Melvin's dad. Because, immediately after he gets sucked up, it zooms in on Melvin, who starts freaking out. And he's like, oh, hey, you gotta do something, But evidently he's not. And from what I read, the speculation is that Melvin's parents are supposed to be out of town, theoretically in Vegas.
They just left him, didn't they?
Yeah,
they just left that
him
fucker
behind.
there.
I would have.
Yeah.
Val and Earl quickly come up with a new plan to utilize the bulldozer tractor to drag a trailer behind it and tank their way to the mountains.
Yeah. It's when you get frustrated in a video game and you're just like, okay, I'm going to pump all of my points into just like armor and just bulldoze this shit.
Yep. Yeah, because the worms won't be able to follow up into the mountains because they're granite and you can't tunnel through rock. In order to get to the bulldozer, however, they decide to set Walter's little mini tractor up to run as a distraction. Earl and Val play rock, paper, scissors, which is a recurring theme in both this and the second movie, to kind of determine who gets to go. But despite Earl winning and deciding to run, Val hits him and takes off instead. Halfway there, the tractor hits a ditch and overturns, forcing Val to kind of just stop and freeze in place to hopefully not get ate. Everybody begins making a lot of noise to try to distract the worm. You can hear Melvin calling them snakeoids here, because apparently Melvin wanted that to stick.
Well, he's a shit. He didn't respect Walter's sacrifice.
But Rhonda ends up kicking open a pipeline off of the water tower, and it works. Val is able to run to the bulldozer, get it working, hook the trailer up, and get everybody loaded on. We cut to Bert and Heather making pipe bombs by the time they're picked up. They all pile into the tractor and start heading off to the mountains, and for a time it seems to be working. But only as long as they don't sit still for too long. Apparently, whenever they stop, the graboids start to learn what's going on. So they start sucking down the bulldozer. And then suddenly they drive into a huge trench trap that the worms dug, which ruins the bulldozer.
And just, like, kind of really underlines how smart these things are. Mm-hmm. Like, they're smart enough to build traps.
Yep. They've got basic intelligence, at least enough. They've got intelligence equivalents of at least a kobold. So Rhonda comes up with an idea to throw the bombs in the direction that they want to run, because the explosions seem to hurt the graboids. They're just the concussive blast is too loud.
Well, I imagine so. It kind of deafens them, I guess you'd say. Like jars their senses.
Yep. Using this plan, they make their way to a rock where many consign themselves to die of thirst.
Yep. Or exposure, or whatever else happens to them.
Bert ends up making a morbid comment about using himself as live bait, which gives Earl the idea to go fishing with the bombs. Mm-hmm. They use this method to kill one of the remaining worms, but the second one, Stumpy, is too smart, and it spits the bomb back at them.
These things learn. It is wild. They're very intelligent for animals.
Yeah.
They're chimpanzees, basically.
Yeah, it's another cool scene, too, because they're everybody ducks down, ready to explode, then it just shoots up in the air
and lands right next to them.
It lands on the bag of other bombs. Mm-hmm. And it ends up scattering Val, Earl, and Rhonda. Everybody else is able to get back on the rock real quick, but Val, Earl, and Rhonda are too far out.
Uh-huh.
The rest of them try to distract Stumpy again so that the trio can make it back to the rock. And they suddenly realize that Stumpy is still too smart and isn't going to fall for this again. Mm-hmm. So then they start wanting Val to use the last bomb that he has to scare it away long enough for them to get to the rock. There's a brief, quiet debate about, starving to death or just dying there. But Val realizes that they're currently at where the movie began and are next to a cliff. So he ends up running straight towards the cliff, throwing the bomb back behind himself, which scares Stumpy over the cliff, and it is subsequently killed. The movie was originally composed completely by Ernest Troost, and that is the westerny country-sounding score that we hear much in the first half of the movie. But later, Robert Folk was brought in to rescore more than 30 minutes of music to give the movie more of a kind of a kick.
Yeah.
This is where the more sweeping, epic music, mostly heard in the finale, is. And Folk is actually uncredited in the credits of the movie.
That's a shame.
Mm-hmm. Val ends up getting together with Rhonda, and that's kind of where the movie ends. An alternate ending was shot where Val and Rhonda's relationship status was much more ambiguous, but apparently after a test screening hated it, they ended up reshooting the ending. So.
I usually don't really care for it when you get a very... we fell in love over the course of this crisis thing, where it comes out of nowhere. But this one, you can actually see them develop affection for each other throughout the entire movie, so it kind of works.
Yeah, there's a lot more chemistry in this one than, let's face it, in most movies. Not even just horror movies, but in most movies.
I like pretty much all the characters in this. I mentioned my stuff with Bert, but that's more just how time has progressed since then and how much of the world is currently on fire. It's not Bert's fault.
Right? No, he's definitely, to me, he's the exception that kind of proves the rules for me.
I hope. I want to believe Bert is a good guy.
Yeah.
I want to believe in Bert.
Yeah, I do. I believe in Bert. So that was Tremors again. Yep. I mean, if you haven't seen it for whatever
definitely
reason,
go watch that trailer.
Yep. Classic movie, great movie, love it to death. But now, without further ado, we're going to go ahead and head on over to the crunch.
We're going to cut to some music real quick, and when we come back, we're going to talk about a big old worm.
Yep.
And we're back.
This one was a really simple creature to do, honestly.
I mean, it's one of those things where it's, in a lot of ways, it's already in D&D with various things.
It has inspired so many other things. So, But it does have a few unique traits that aren't in D&D. So we'll get to those here in a second. So in honor of my beloved daughter, I named this thing.
There was only one thing you could call this guy, and I'm glad you went for it.
Okay, I'm glad. I almost didn't do it because we already have the Screamaconda.
Yeah.
But I had to call this thing the Screamy Worm.
There was no other choice for us. Like, that's something that's just for us and our family. But, yeah, there
was no other option.
And everyone else is just going to have to deal with it. You can call this guy whatever you want when you're on the campaign. We don't hold you to anything that we put on the page.
But this our Screamy Worm is a huge beast, chaotic neutral. Mm-hmm. Pretty high armor class at 18. We see that they've got some pretty good armor, especially on their facial zone. And for the most part, like you watch Bert and Heather unload an awful lot of ammo into it before it finally takes it down. So, it's definitely got high AC at 18, a decent amount of hit points at 129 average. And it's, of course, speed. It's got a burrow speed of 40 feet. Mm-hmm. Can't move along the ground other than that. I gave it high strength, 18, 12 in dexterity, 16 in constitution, and a 14 in intelligence. These things are smart.
Yeah.
Low wisdom and low charisma because they're blind and, they stink.
They do.
I gave it a tremor sense of 120 feet.
That's one of those things that I always forget actually exists in raw D&D, because it never comes up. Like,
I've used it quite a few times actually.
Really? Okay. Because it just seems like it's one of those things where it doesn't happen a whole lot, except for this guy and like the purple worm and stuff like that.
Zorn
has
it.
Okay,
Zorn have
that
it.
makes sense.
But yeah, tremor sense 120 feet. Yep. It is blind beyond this radius, which is what a lot of tremor sense creatures do not have.
Oh, really?
From what I can tell, most tremor sense creatures in D&D have eyes.
Huh?
It's weird, but whatever. Passive perception of 7. These things are not very observant because, again, they don't have eyes.
Right.
And then damage vulnerabilities to thunder damage.
Okay.
Now, of course, just as a reminder, thunder does not, in D&D terms, does not mean lightning. Thunder is sound. Yep. Concussion.
It's acoustic.
Yep. And for these things, that's what they're vulnerable to. Mm-hmm. That's what they use in the movie. No languages, of course. Gave him a challenge rating of 5. These things are tough. I mean, in the movie, we see average people taking them out, but not without substantial effort
and not
planning.
without exploiting their weaknesses.
Exactly. Explosions and gravity.
Yeah.
A
lot of things are weak to gravity if you think about it.
Most things are weak to gravity.
Yeah.
But their only trait is stench, which is lifted directly from the troglodytes. With a lower DC. Any creature other than a Screamy Worm that starts within 5 feet of it, they have to succeed on a DC 8 Constitution saving throw, or they're poisoned until the creature's next turn. If they do succeed, they're immune to it for an hour. So, pretty simple, but I wanted to include the smell in there somewhere, because that's such a staple of these things and something that I always remember. I mean, granted, in the movie, nobody's ever debilitated by the stench, but...
No, but it's something that's commented on enough that I think making it a feature is of course, a wise move.
I don't think that it's going to come up too terribly often.
Yeah, how often are you going to be within 5 feet of these things for longer than a moment?
Other than while being eaten.
Yes, exactly. And then,
which I guess is probably the point.
That's a problem.
Yep.
Oh, man, I'm being eaten by this thing, and it smells terrible. But I mean, it's just a DC 8 save, so even while you're restrained by this thing, you're probably going to be okay.
Right. And that's why I made the DC so low, is because it's apparently not debilitating in the movie.
No, it's just annoying.
Yep. And then as far as its actions go, I did give it the multi-attack.
Okay.
It can attack with 3 tentacles.
Well, that makes sense.
Make 3 tentacle attacks.
That's just...
Yep.
Yeah.
Alternatively, the Screamy Worm can pull a target that it's grappling up to 15 feet closer and make a swallow attack.
Okay.
So we have another creature with swallow.
Yeah, I saw that.
We saw it coming, right?
I mean, yeah.
So as far as...
We're kind of getting in a hole, Matt, and the hole is eating things and lighting them on fire.
Whatever, man. Whatever. It's the nature of the beast in this case.
All these different beasts.
So, yeah, it's got a bite attack. Average damage 3d10 plus 4 piercing, plus 7 to hit. So, like, these things will hurt when they bite you. And then, of course, it's got the swallow attack, which is, again, directly lifted from things like the giant frog. Though, in this one, if it's being grappled, it can... Or if the target is being grappled, the Screamy Worm can try to swallow it by making a bite attack. If the bite attack hits, the creature is swallowed. The grapple ends. Okay. Target is blinded and restrained. The same, the standard swallow mechanics here. They take 2d4 acid damage and 2d6 bludgeoning damage at the start of each of the Screamy Worm's turns.
Okay.
Which is a little bit modified from the normal swallow mechanics. They don't usually take the bludgeoning damage, but to me, these things probably crush inside of them. Like, they're big, but there's probably not a huge amount of room inside.
Yeah, that makes sense. Mm-hmm. Okay, now, here's something that I just got to thinking of, Matt. Mm-hmm. We see the graboid pull a car under the ground at one point.
Right.
But it does not eat the car.
Okay.
It just pulls it under the ground.
Sure.
Christine is a large creature.
Uh-oh. Okay.
So can a graboid eat Christine?
So in my notes here, it has to be a large or smaller target.
Right.
So, yes.
Okay. So maybe the graboid just didn't eat that car.
Well, again, I would argue that a real-life car is a huge creature. Or a huge construct.
You're probably right.
Yeah. Christine, our wicked wagon, is a little bit smaller than average. Okay. So,
I just had to...
You had to bring that in.
I saw pieces coming together.
Okay, that's fair.
And I had to make the comment that this graboid can eat a car.
That's fair. We'll either exploit things in the movie that were possible, or you're just going to challenge me. One of the two.
Yeah.
So I'm okay with it.
That's fine.
But then it's, of course, got its tentacle attacks. Mm-hmm. It's plus 7 to hit. These things have a reach of 15 feet.
Right.
I wanted, I kind of had trouble determining the range or the reach of these things because, clearly they're meant to reach out and grab things. But at the same time, you can get away from them by getting on a rock.
Right.
So, and honestly, 15 feet's probably more than these things can feasibly do.
Probably.
But
I'm fine with it for a game like rules.
And at the same time, you see at least 15 feet of snake tongue wrapped around a horse. So, who knows?
Yeah.
But
when it wraps around the axle of the truck and stuff like that and gets pulled off, I don't think that's 15 feet, but it might be, I don't know, 6 feet or so.
Yeah, I mean, and
that's half
wrapped
of
in
this.
half. Yeah.
So no, I have no problem with that.
But each tentacle only does 1d4 plus 4 piercing damage.
Okay.
But the target has to make a DC 14 strength saving throw or be grappled with an escape DC of 14. And the Screamy Worm can use each tentacle to grapple a different target or the same target. But for each extra tentacle grappling the single target, the escape DC is increased by 2.
Okay.
So, which is not a mechanic I've seen in other creatures.
No, that just makes sense, though.
Right? I think it makes it more interesting. Like, if 3 tentacles are wrapped around you, you're going to have a hell of a time getting away from it.
Yeah, I could see either doing that where it increases the initial DC, or they have to make separate checks for each tentacle. Either one of those.
Right. And I think either one would accomplish the same goal, but one is a little bit more tedious.
Yeah. I like this one better myself.
But, so yeah, that is our Screamy Worm. Simple and effective.
It's simple, but I dig it. It really replicates what we see from these things in the movie. So yeah, it's a cool beastie there you got, man.
I appreciate it. I like it. Again, one of my all-time favorite movie monsters. I love these things, and I was very happy to be able to do this. I mean, let's face it, I was going to cover this movie regardless whether it was a request or not.
But this was on our list from day one, right, at the top.
Absolutely. So, cool. So that was me for this week.
Yep.
Chris, what have you got for us in 2 weeks?
All right. Well, I had kind of a rough time picking a movie this time just because of everything that's been going on. I had a million different places where I wanted to go. But I've kind of been wanting to rewatch this movie because I really like it. So we are going to watch Attack the Block.
Oh, sweet. Okay, cool. Cool. I look forward to that.
Yeah,
Awesome.
it's a good movie.
Yeah.
It's a fun movie. Star-making role for Mr. John Boyega.
So yeah, as always, thank you all so much for listening. We really do appreciate that. Feel free to follow us at Creature Crunch on Twitter. Join our Patreon to get our bonus Critter Kibbles episode, where you can get such gems as our John Voight's performance stat block. I have to.
We have to put that caveat on there.
I do.
After finding out more information about that man.
Yep. But we also have the exclusive, maybe not exclusive.
I wouldn't say exclusive, because I'm sure someone's done something similar, but...
We got a semi-truck.
We got a semi-truck. Hey, kid, you want to find a truck?
But yeah, join us there. Feel free to reach out to us, creaturecrunchpodcast@gmail.com as well.
Yep.
Hit us up if you have any requests, any movies you'd like us to cover.
Or any comments, especially, like we keep saying, if you use any of these creatures in your campaigns... they are all up on D&D Beyond for use in their encounter creator, and just to have the stat blocks in...
With one exception.
What's that?
The Cooked Hell Turkey. D&D Beyond will not let me publish the Cooked Hell Turkey because it is too similar to the Living Unseen Servant stat block.
That's really funny.
Yep.
Like, that is so... I didn't think they were that similar to each other, but...
I think it's because the Living Unseen Servant has... The only ability is... the slam attack, and that's the Cooked Hell Turkey's only attack.
Well, name it something different. Name it Bump.
So yeah, sorry guys, you can't have a Cooked Hell Turkey. I mean, I guess if you really need to, just pull up the Living Unseen Servant stat block.
Yeah, I guess, because apparently they're the same thing.
But yeah, like I said, hit us up if you do use any of these creatures.
Right.
We'd really love to hear that feedback, so we can maybe edit or just adjust for the future.
Yeah, or even just send us a note if you're enjoying the show at all. Like, feedback helps so much.
Yeah, just knowledge and
Feedback
gratification.
from people we don't see on a daily basis.
Right.
As much as we love our family and friends for listening to us ramble on these shows.
Yep.
Like, I love it when we get little notes from other people.
Absolutely.
Even people, like, who are excited about shows that we're going to be doing. Like, there was a thread mentioning Metamorphosis the other day on Twitter, and I was like, oh, hey, we're doing that episode in February, and people got kind of excited about it.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's super cool.
And it's like, okay, I'll let you guys know when we're doing it.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, cool. Yeah, and definitely. I mean, we also crave the validation. So
that helps a lot.
And friends and family, keep it up. We love you guys, and we love hearing it. So. Looking at you, Lance.
Lance, one of the two people who gives us $5 every month, the other being me.
Yep. All right. So anyway,
who are we and where can we be found, Matt?
Yeah, Chris. We well, I already talked about where we can be found.
Yeah.
Chris, where can you be found?
I can be found on Twitter at the Library C. That's CEE. I yell about library stuff and get very sad lately.
And you can find me at on Twitter at Danny_Hamsteak. Generally, I just yell at corporations and occasionally retweet a thing.
Yeah. Oh, and it's worth mentioning, if you want to find our stuff on D&D Beyond, it's not under any of our usernames. It's under Matt's old username, which is the best disguise with underscores under best, or under the and after the and after best.
Because it's something I hadn't thought about. Yep, that is
yeah.
That is
because
true.
otherwise they're kind of hard to find on there,
Maybe
and that's the easiest way to find them.
Also, I think it also bears mentioning. I don't think I have ever mentioned it in any episode, but
I've
if
mentioned it in a couple.
No. If you do want these stat blocks, you can find them on our Twitter. But there's also a link in the description of the episode.
Right.
So, anyway,
you can find them in lots of different places in lots of different formats. Like there's the link in each description of the episode. We got the actual stat blocks done from the home brewery on Twitter, so you can just view those right on Twitter. Same way with our Patreon. We got the Patreon exclusive ones locked behind the paywall. Please free them. You can look at them on D&D Beyond, where they're in that format. You can use them in Encounter Builders and stuff for that. There's lots of different ways you can find these guys now.
Yeah. So please use them. Tell us how good or bad job we did. But yeah, I guess that's gonna be it. We need to streamline
this shit.
We need to streamline the closing. Bye.